6 o'clock and calling the meeting to order. Brian, would you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Alrighty. Now we had 2 sets of minutes. Where's that? Regardless. We have 2 sets of minutes. The first is the Select Board non-public work session on June 11th. Is there a motion?
Make a motion, we accept the minutes as written.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 And the second set are the Select Board meeting minutes from June 11th. Is there a motion?
Make a motion, we accept as written.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
The Select Board will meet on the following dates. The regular meetings will be on Monday, June 23rd and August 13th at 6 p.m. Work sessions prior to the regular meetings will start at 5 p.m. And Monday, July 16th, there will be a budget workshop at 4 p.m. All the above meetings will be held in the town hall unless otherwise posted. Citizens wishing to be listed on the Select Board's agenda should notify the town hall before 12 noon the Friday before the scheduled meeting. New members are still needed to fill the zoning board. If interested, please submit a letter of intent to the Plymouth Selectboard's office at 6 Post Office Square in Plymouth. There is a letter requesting appointment of Bill Bolton to the Pemigewasset River Local Advisory Committee.
I make a motion that we reappoint Bill to serve.
You don't even want me to read the, okay, all right.
Do you recommend we do this?
Well, that could be under discussion. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Yes, I recommend you doing it. I really like Perlac, so.
Good.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Say aye.
Aye.
Wow, Bill Bolton is reappointed. Could you give it to me? Did I bury it? Oh. Can I sign this?
The board has to sign it.
All right. All right, there we go. Never mind. I don't get to sign it?
Is that 2 pages or just one?
It's one signature page. And we've got Brian Dutow. Sorry about you and I are. Next, we have a couple of visitors. The first is Senator Bob Guida.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. 2 things on my plate, and of course, I'm all ears if you have any more on yours. First and foremost, correspondence and communication from the town with respect to 54-acre purchase over by the circle, just the other side of the chairlift, or the last chair, or whatever the restaurant is, and the disposition of the existing armory property. I met probably 2-3 weeks ago with Deputy Adjutant General Perry from the National Guard, basically second in command. We talked about the issue. Of course, we're well aware of the issue of taxable property in the town and being gobbled up. Warren, my town, is much the same position with the National Forest. They now own 63% of our town. It's not getting better, so we're aware of that squeeze. I would like to ask your permission to have Deputy Adjutant Perry speak to this issue as the person that's kind of going to be the driver for it, for the Guard. The property currently will likely be disposed of through a sale, but I would like to let him manage that discussion at this point in time.
Okay, please, sir.
Good evening. For the record, Warren Perry, Deputy Adjutant General, New Hampshire National Guard. I just want to give you a little background on the purchase of the 54 acres, if you don't know, and you can certainly stop me whenever you want to stop me with regard to that. So we purchased the property that best fit our needs for future facilities for the National Guard. It's a perfect property for us. As we made the decision to purchase that property, we looked in and around the available properties in Plymouth, and we chose the one that we thought would have the least amount of impact to the town. And the property that we purchased in question was agriculturally zoned, and we purposely avoided the commercially zoned properties. So that's why we picked that piece of land. The facility that we have now here that currently exists in Plymouth is aged. It won't continue to meet the needs of the National Guard. It's too small. The facility's too small. It's not worth expanding there. There's not enough acreage to manage the force protection issues that we need, the standoff issues that we need to have. The parcel of land is too small. That starts to drive the train a little bit. We have, based on the way the federal government funds facilities management for the National Guard in the fiscal processes at the federal level, we anticipate that we'll be able to begin design on the new facility at the new location, the Tenny Mountain Circle area, in about 2025, with construction beginning in 2026 and occupation of that new facility in 2027. And that's just based on how we are given money in the National Defense Authorization Act to be able to build the facilities. In order to do that and start that process, we have to have land. So the state, not the federal government, purchases the land, the federal government builds the facilities. So the linchpin is land. An interesting fact is, right now the Boy Scouts of America own more land than the National Guard in New Hampshire, in the state. So we're always looking to buy land, and we are continuing to look to buy it. I think right now we have a shortfall in terms of our authorizations based on our force structure size of about 27,000 acres, less the 50 we just bought. So we're always going to be looking for land. When we did a review at Senator Guida's request of the deed, there are two ways that the deeds kind of the property gets deeded to us. This particular property was deeded to us outright as long as we constructed a readiness center on it within 5 years of the deed. I don't know the date off the top of my head, but it's been at least 50 years. So sometimes there's a revision clause that it goes back to the town or back to the original owner of the land and their heirs. In this case, it looks like, without a legal review, it looks like the deed has us owning the property outright after we finished the construction 5 years ago. Our plan is to dispose of that property when we vacate it. So, and as Senator Guida alluded to, our intent is to sell it in accordance with the state policies and procedures. So we'll be bound by whatever the state tells us to do with regard to that and whatever we can do with that. So really that's the background. I think I've covered the high points, and I'm willing to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Go ahead, Paul.
General, did the state consider contacting the town and asking what might be a better piece of property?
I don't think we did, no, sir. We bought the land, as it was on the market. And from my understanding is that it was first listed in September of 2015 and sat on the market for those 3 years. So. Yes, sir.
But had you contacted the town, we would have also shown you our master plan. And yes, it's zone agriculture, but it's a prime future business frontage that we were going to have from the last chair south. Also, the town is the abutter to that property on the south side. Where Snowy Gables is that restaurant, those 2 acres were in a butter, and we weren't notified.
Okay, sir.
And I think we actually have kind of discussed it briefly in a work session earlier, and, I think, it might be kind of late at this point in time, but there are other properties that we can think of that would be far better, that have been inactive, maybe not even in our town. Because in reality, that would eat up quite a large parcel that takes it off the tax rolls, and we can't, develop it, or nobody can develop it. So we've got some concerns about it, but anybody else?
I'll see. Would the state consider giving the Armory and its property to the town to make up for the losses that we've been encumbering from that since its
It's something we can look
existence?
at, sir. I mean, that's not a question I can answer today, but it's something that certainly we can consider and look
I
at.
wish you
in
would,
the
because the state's going to make us get the highway department off the river also, and that would be an ideal location.
But again, there would be no tax revenue for moving the highway department there, right? So you-
No, but we would gain, that's better than us having to now go out and find some property. I mean, you're going to be abutting our 2 acres that we have out on 3A. We weren't checked, no, we weren't
That's not a bad idea, actually.
given any notice about that. We've lost 54 acres of prime taxable property now to the state. We have a road in town that we were going to get $1.1 million from the state this year to do. And Mr. Guy, that was Senator Guy, that knows that didn't happen. That got pushed out to 2027, and amazingly now it got dropped down to 2025. So we lost $1.1 million to that this past year. And now we wake up and find out that 54 acres of prime development property is off the market.
I don't think it's fair to put that on.
No, I'm not saying, that's why I said the
What we
state.
have
I didn't say the
at
National
state
Guard.
level, Well, at the state level, there is a universal problem, and it's a problem of communicating with the communities. DOT and the rumble strips, they're in, oh surprise, $556,000 they spent fixing that mistake, okay? So there's a systemic problem of agencies communicating with localities. Some of that may be incumbent on you to outreach, okay? And as well, we're looking to maybe establish a process whereby we require, as part of an acquisition, that the communities be notified, particularly with state acquisition of currently taxable lands. That's a major issue for you and for a number of other places, college towns primarily. So, they went through all the approved processes. The Guard doesn't develop that process, okay? Administrative services and the departments work together, and influenced by legislations, which, President Company notwithstanding, I intend to bring in legislation to address this issue. We can't stop a private seller from selling to the state, but we may be able to restrict the percentage of a community's taxable property that a state is allowed to procure. We can come at it from the other side. And to say, you can't buy more than that, or if you buy more than that, you're going to be subject to taxation, whether at ad valorem or some other rate, because the impact on the communities is substantial. You do have the, $600,000 or $700,000 PILT agreement with a college. We negotiate that every few years. So there is that component of the issue. You have to be very careful about protecting the rights of people for as far as their property to buy and sell. The state also as well, but I think as a state agency, because it takes it off the tax rolls, we should be able to arrange something that might restrict that from going too far in the case of Plymouth or Warren with the National Forest, for example.
Maybe I shouldn't have focused on that, but you mentioned a pilot that we have with the university. Actually, it's a life safety agreement. But are you suggesting that a pilot could be pursued with this property, or?
There's no reason that I can see that it couldn't.
Okay.
And that would be something to take up with perhaps the Attorney General, with your counsel, and find out. I don't see why it couldn't. You certainly are open to inviting them to have a discussion. But I don't know, I don't know of any restrictions against it.
Well,
And Senator, just to be clear, that's why I didn't say National Guard, that's why I didn't say the general. I know it's the state, and it is a systemic problem, and it keeps coming back and biting this town. And Frank, don't panic. However, right across from our airport, across the road, we own just about that many acres that we have never developed. The Chinooks from New York come in every year and practice up at the field, right at the airport. Maybe we could have discussed that. Flat,
Was there an RFP or, any kind of a public notice given that the guard was looking?
I can't answer that
Don't know the
question.
answer. Okay. So, now, with respect to that parcel, I don't know that you can undo an existing sale. I mean, that's done. With respect to the piece that the Armory currently sits on, I think that we can do some things with that. Legislatively, if necessary, especially given Plymouth's particularly precarious, taxation, taxable property issue. So you got lots of time to do it. You got 9 years basically, or maybe 7 or 8.
But I would just say that a transfer from the Adjutant General's Department in terms of property, state to another state agency, DOT, that's probably easier than, when I talked to Senator Guider earlier, he talked about giving the town back the land that the existing facility is on. And I think that would be harder. I think it would be hard to make the state approve, for us to give it back to you, free. I mean, there's value there. I think it would be harder. I didn't say impossible, but harder. But giving it to the DOT to take them off the highway or off the river, that's a different issue. That's a state-to-state transfer that maybe is.
Actually, it's not.
town.
It's a town resource, our highways department
Okay,
is
it's
down by
a
the river.
town piece. Okay,
Yep.
I thought when you said DOT, I immediately went to
no, I
Victoria
said highway
Street.
department.
It's not that difficult. I sit on long-range capital planning, and what we do, the majority of it is parcels of land that the state owns. How are they being disposed of? And so.
We've had more difficult processes in that committee than.
Really?
Yes.
You made an interesting point, though, so you own the property as well as the building because you completed the construction of the building within 5 years or something like
Yes,
that?
yes.
So is it state
When
resource?
when we say we own the property, we'll go back to the selectmen's terminology that the state owns it. So the state has some control over the disposition.
Okay.
But it's not subject to federal funding anymore. After the 25 years of the federal funding, that essentially it's a grant. And we have, subject to the grant, we have to use it for 25 years. The life of the building expired, the state owns it gratis, no fees back to the government, to the federal government.
It's not that I'm focusing on another thing, too, but so is there a requirement for the state to sell it? And if that's the requirement, then $1 seems like an adequate, just to keep that in mind.
And again, I can't answer the question today about the disposition 6 years from now and I'm not going to commit the state today for what's going to happen 6 years from now. Certainly, everything is in the realm of possibility.
But also to keep us as the first customer, or first refusal or something, but, I think the town has a lot to lose and much to gain, so.
I know you said the land was agriculturally zoned. Plymouth, quite a bit of land in Plymouth is agriculturally zoned. I don't know what the sales price was in 2015 or what it was, what the asking price still was when you negotiated your price. But there was a supermarket, I believe, at one point looking at that land. It was the area where growth was going to continue for the town of Plymouth. And it's going to make it takes quite a bit off of our tax rolls. And the price that was on there was not an agricultural price to go plant corn or anything like that. It was more of the commercial end of values. I'm just guessing.
Yeah. I'm just going by what it was zoned at when we bought it. And just our decision to buy that particular parcel that was available.
One question. So, why Plymouth?
There's an existing facility here. I think part of our plan is to be geographically situated across the state to make sure that we can get to where we need to get to accomplish the second of our 3 missions, right? So we have 3 missions in the National Guard: fight, win the nation's wars. That one's pretty obvious. The third one is to build enduring partnerships, and the second one is to protect the homeland, right? So one of the things we want to do is be able to be where we need to be. I think there's some advantages to where we are. The access and the roads are good. We're close to I-93. We can continue to operate in the state in the event of a man-made or natural disaster. And as it fits with the deployment of the units in the rest of the state, it's perfect, right? It's not not exactly the North Country. And it's just a good place to be in terms of roads and the geography and spacing of the rest of the units in the state.
So you can see our frustration, however.
I knew that coming into the meeting, yes.
Okay. Because the state decides to use Plymouth a lot for different things. So.
For which we're happy and proud.
Yes.
But, yeah.
Any more questions on that issue? Thank you for coming. You're welcome to stay or leave, I guess, as you wish.
I will.
You've got a ways to go.
I do. So I'm gonna head back
Have
up.
a good night.
Thank you for your time, gentlemen, and
Thank
we
you.
appreciate your candor as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Second issue was Highland Street, and in email communications, there was some confusion about Highland Street versus Tenny Mountain Highway. Well, I drive that highway every day, and between Dunkin' Donuts and 93, ba-dum, 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 ba-dum. So I made an inquiry to DOT, what's the plan for that stretch of highway? It's an important stretch of highway, and they're going to resurface it. There's a term, that may not be the correct term, but they're going to put like 1.5 inches to 2 inches of asphalt on it here. I think this year it's in the plan to do that. So that answered that question, but in that communication, there was the issue of Highland Street came up, which is probably, I'm going to say, the worst road I travel in the town of Plymouth. It's deplorable, pardon the expression. And so there's some history here that I'm not totally familiar with. But what I will tell you is this: Tilton had a problem with a road that was in deplorable shape that had been turned over to the town with the agreement that the state would repair it or bring it up to expectations for safe travel. Had not been done, and DOT was out of money, so they said, we're not doing it, we're taking it off. Well, Tilton approached me. That is now back on for 2020. They're going to get the money to do $2.2 million, I think, to do that. $560,000 for an engineering study and $2.2 million to do the road. But the point I'm trying to make is Tilton came to me and said, we have a problem. Okay, I don't know the history of Highland. I know that it was turned over by the state, and I'm pretty successful, but the chairman of the Transportation Committee of the Senate, Regina Birtzel's very effective. That Tilton piece been off the 10-year plan. We got it up so that it's now in 2020, which is basically 2 years away, one biennium, and they're going to have that road redone. So I'm very happy to make that same effort here. It's too late for this year. The budget's done, and capital improvements are done, the 10-year transportation plan. I understand the frustration of working through the North Country Council or, Lakes Region Development, those folks. The real decisions are made down in the legislature, and that's where you need to exert your horsepower. And that is me, at least for the next 6 months or so. And it's too late to do anything this year, although we have significant excess revenues coming into the state. The 10-year plan has already been set for the next 10 years, and so I would anticipate working very hard to get this thing taken care of. The best way to do that, when you have a problem like that, reach out to your representatives, your senators, okay? And I convene meetings all the time with commissioners, okay? DOT, DES, DRA. I've had probably a dozen meetings in the last 2 months with constituents, whether they're communities or individuals, okay? Come into the Senate conference room. Why? It's neutral ground, okay? And now we have a discussion about solving the problem. And so, been very successful with that, and I'm very happy to make that same effort with you. Unfortunately, I think we're done this year until the next biennium and the new budget comes out. It'll be very important to be on the capital improvements, 10-year plan, and so forth. Sitting on finance and ways and means, as you know, the House didn't get a budget done this year, so I spent about 12 nights sleeping in my office on a cot working to develop the state budget. And a large part of that is the 6 areas in which that budget is developed, one of which is transportation, public safety. So again, if we know that there's a project that has a serious, problem, then we can work on that exclusively, and we can accelerate that legislatively into the top of the list, or certainly higher up than 2025. So I guess whatever notice or whatever action was taken brought it ahead from 27 to 25. We can probably get it done up because it's a college town, right? A lot of traffic, It's a major arterial, elementary school, high school, all those things that are safety infrastructure related. So you need the fire department and those ambulance to have a good road to get there, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So when you start tying those together, it brings good impetus to advance that up that chain towards a more current, or a more recent, if you will, less distant resolution. So I'm very happy to work at that. I truly wish I'd had the knowledge of that problem earlier, before the end of the session. I think we could have probably gotten something done, but we'll make it better next year, 2025 now. Maybe we can get up to 2020 or something like that, the next biennium.
Senator, the conversation that we were having by email, Kathy and myself, your aide, an individual from DOT finally chimed into that string of email and has a lot of wrong information. That individual stated that no road is given to a town until they have guaranteed 100% repair work. And that individual said that that was done. That individual's looking at old prints that show all of Highland Street being done. They only did 33%. They only did phase 1. The townspeople paid for phase 3. We're doing phase 2 next week. The state only did 33% of its commitment, not 100% like that email states.
So at the end of this phase 3, will that road be in the condition that you want it?
No,
I don't know what your phases are, so here's what I'm driving to, okay? My job is to bring the need together with the provider. So I would encourage you to come, Paul, as a town manager, perhaps your highway department head, your road agent. We'll set a meeting up, and we'll get down to Concord. We can do it pretty quickly, with Commissioner Sheehan and any of the other players in that venue. We need to straighten out what the facts really are, and then we can move ahead from there. Ultimately, it comes down to the budget, and again, that critical function of identifying a project, getting it moved up, and then specifically targeting the funds for it.
and we did honestly do every single thing that you're saying, and they sent us to North Country Council, to which we spent 9 years at the state's hand doing everything that they told us we had to do, and they put us on the agenda for this construction season, and last August took us off.
Yeah. Why did they take you off? Was it funding, or was it another reason?
No, we came in tied for first at North Country Council. Now we're getting the same type of correspondence from the state saying, now we have to go to Lakes Region.
No,
We'll do the same
We'll
thing.
fix that.
I'm just saying, we've heard all this before.
Well,
And I had to get on the board of directors at North Country Council to help expedite this. We came in tied for first. Last March, a year ago,
Yeah.
they told us we were tied for first. We got moved up to
one of the issues
2027.
DOT claims is the funding issue. We don't have the money. There are several tiers of state highways, major arterials, and then descending, if you will, in order of importance in terms of the transportation infrastructure. And so what they told Tilton was, we're out of money, so you're off the list. And I said, well, we're not out of money, and you're on the list, and we got it done. So I think we can make a really good run at that, and I'm very happy to do that. We can set a meeting at your convenience, and with the players, and let's get down and get the facts on the table. First thing is define the issue, right? Fact finding, and then proceed to a solution. I've never failed at that. It's difficult sometimes. You've been working on this for 10 years, 9 years, and frustration is there. But we get past that, because we set a solution, we get an agreement. Okay, we may go back and forth a couple of times on it, but we'll get an agreement of some sort. And of course, being able to jump into the capital budget, a 10-year plan, and work with the committees and the folks. So usually we can get something done. That is an awful road.
That was just me, Senator. The town's been dealing with this for over 30 years. That road was given with that promise over 30 years ago.
Well, we'll see. We'll make the state perform. questions?
Yeah, any others?
Any other issues on your plate, in your wheelhouse that you're worried about or excited about, happy about?
Town needs more revenue pushed in its direction from the state, as well as our school system, but I guess you know that.
But you know what? School systems, interestingly enough, the highest attendance we had in our state, in the entire statewide system of students, was in 2002 to 2003. It's been steadily declining ever since, right? Student enrollments from then, statewide, are down about 18%. Funding to schools is up 70%. So there's this tremendous disparity. And we need more money. No, we don't need more money. When you're running, I'm sorry to say, when you're running class sizes of 7, 8, 9, and 10, you're going to have to consolidate. We did it in Warren. You cannot effectively, cost-effectively run 10 people in a class and pay a teacher full salary and benefits. It doesn't work. This is a system that is, population is declining, and you have to deal with that. We did it in Warren. We were going to consolidate too. We listened to the people. I'm on the school board up there, and we said, no, we'll consolidate first and second. It's working fine. Budget's fine. Taxes are stable. Those are tough decisions that the people have to make. Other issue is that most of that increase isn't going to teacher salaries. Don't blame it on the teachers. Don't blame it on the administrators. It's going to aides, special needs kids that are getting aides. They're in our school. We've got as many aides as we do teachers. Okay, and they're getting paid. Some full-time, some part-time. That's all driven by policy. And while it's nice to point the finger at the feds, most of our problems with education special needs funding demands are generated by the state board. That's the problem. Now, Frank Edelblut, as the commissioner, is doing a good job trying to get his arms around that and fix it. Okay, our teachers do a great job, most of them with some very limited resources. We do good products, our kids are coming out. One of the problems that we have statewide with our education system is it's disconnected from the needs of the employers. So I'm working with Chancellor Gattell, the community college system, to marry the community college system with the businesses and manufacturers and research and businesses that need these employees, so that when they come out of school, they've already done an internship for a summer or two with a company, okay, for credit. We now have dual enrollment across the board in the state, so students can get college credits in high school. I mean, so we're moving very quickly to address that broken chain, if you will, producing a student that's ready to take a job. 30% of our workforce can't pass a drug test. I opposed decriminalization, and I will oppose legalization. When you're trying to bring high-tech companies in, most of them work in the defense industry or in industries where clearances are a requirement. And when 30% of your workforce can't pass a drug test, you've got a problem. They're not coming here. So I'm excited about the Army initiative, ARMI, Advanced Regenerative Manufacturing. We gave a landmark 10-year tax break, BET and BPT, to any business that does 80% of its work in that field. It's going to be out of Manchester. To me, that's exciting. I would like to have seen it out of Littleton, but they don't have the resources. But Manchester moves the center of mass of that industry. It's a globally new industry, north from Boston. And so the ripple effect is going to heat up here. I think Plymouth State, I think our community, if we get high-tech people interested, has a real opportunity to really make things sing. So anyway, back to the highways. Paul, I'll have Griffin give you a call, and we can set up a meeting, see if we can get Highland Street squared away. Further questions? Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Hunter. Grace Garvey. Lad's not here, so I guess you're covering the... Yeah.
Irene Grace Garvey, for the record, with the Plymouth Energy Commission. As most of you know, I'm not the chair. Actually, Lad is, but I'm here to speak on behalf of the PEC members tonight. As you recall, back in November, when the Constellation Energy contract was coming up for renewal, we spoke with the Select Board because we had discovered that there was an option for 100% renewable energy, and the Select Board was agreeable to engaging with Constellation for 5 years with those 100% RECs, as they call them. It was a teeny bit more expensive to go that way, but I think we all saw the value of committing to the renewable portfolio. So at the time, I think we met with the select board over in this other room. It was during a budget meeting, and what the PEC was suggesting is that to sort of offset that little bit of increase in energy costs for the town, that we would create a kind of a buddy program where the PEC members could work with a member or a point person from each of the municipal buildings to see if there were ways to reduce energy and cut back on energy use. So we haven't formulated that buddy plan yet, but we wanted to make sure we still had the select board's, approval to launch that research and put together a plan before we put the energy into it. Does that make sense? I hope I didn't lose anybody. That was kind of a long run-off sentence, wasn't it?
And Val is the board member that's assigned to that?
I am.
Yep. And do you have any,
Well, my big concern, and it's not as the select board rep to the Energy Commission so much as it is having been on the select board for 6 years previous, I'm not sure that what you're suggesting wouldn't be seen as an insult to our department heads. They're already working hard to save energy. They have had energy audits done in every department, every building in the town, and they've implemented them over the last many years. So I'm not sure that it wouldn't, as I say, just be taken as we have work to do. We don't need another energy, any more energy input. We've implemented everything that we can afford to implement, and we're kind of stuck. Paul, could you weigh in on that?
As a department head,
Well, yes.
I have 3 studies of this building downstairs,
Yeah.
$70,000. I would have liked to have had $70,000 to fix the building. And I think you're going to get that from every department head. They're all going to produce 2 or 3 energy audits, going back to when Val was on the board and the Energy Commission did it back then. They went through every building.
So one of the things that concerns me as a taxpayer is why are we paying that kind of money without following through? So that was a little bit of what we were thinking also is we have this opportunity in the form of
You weren't paying
audits.
any kind of money.
I'm sorry?
Energy Commission would go out and get
It
a
was in the middle
grant.
of a sentence.
Sorry, Grace, but I wasn't finished either.
Okay.
All right, you can go first.
No, go ahead. You said you were not finished. Did you think that I interrupted you, Paul?
No, you didn't. My mistake. Go ahead.
So I spoke with Paul Phillips the other day, who was on the Energy Commission during that period of time when the energy audits were being conducted. So we thought we might, if, again, we had the select board's, approval on moving forward with just researching what had come of those audits and where there are places where we can implement changes. It's sometimes hard to understand saving money can come from spending money, but we know from PERE and the Better Buildings project that that sometimes taking that leap and spending some more money can save us in the long run. So I think Paul had something.
I'm all set.
so Paul Phillips suggested looking at those audits to see what might have been implemented,
A
or?
very brief conversation with him, but yes. He was just going to share as a past PEC member. So I don't want to speak for him.
Well, I mean, we certainly have the records of the audits, and, again, I think the biggest issue is The grants were, we got the grants to have the audits done, but then we never had the money, never got grants for the money to implement the recommendations of the audits. And I've mentioned that at one of our meetings, it's, go ahead, Paul.
I just want the town to know that the town did not spend any money for any of those audits. Energy Commission went out and got grants, and it was the grant money that they got that was spent to do the audits.
Were those Paray funds or what? Or what grants were?
Different ones. I don't believe they were all parade. At least one of them would have been. It would have been back in the day with Paul Phillips and Mr. Mockley and Steve Whitman. And when the Conservation Commission was a conservation committee,
Right.
they did one.
Bill?
Yeah.
Maybe at the next heads of all the departments, Paul could ask if there's any projects that still are out there that could be energy related, and we could give you a project and see if you could have a grant writer or one of your people in your board and go out and see if you can get a grant for us.
That would be awesome. I just wrote that down. I think it's a great idea to utilize any kind of grant money that's out there.
It is. I mean, the biggest problem with grant money, though, is that typically it requires a match.
Yeah.
And we have no extra money in the budget for a match to a grant.
Understood. I'm a taxpayer, too.
So if you could find an outright grant that
Yep.
does not require a match, that'd be great. We could do a buddy-buddy program with you. The select board members could go to your members of your commission, and we can tell you how to save energy in your homes.
Yeah,
Just
fair
kidding.
enough.
Just kidding.
No, and this was not, and I appreciate, Val, that you have transparency about the concern about insulting people. I never would that be our goal in a million years. It was really a way to commit to following through with our thought that if this Constellation contract was actually going to cost the town a little bit more, that there might be ways to save. It wasn't to go in and micromanage what the town buildings managers were doing, or
Yeah, and I just think that
Sure.
the buddy idea is not the way to approach it. I think that Mike's idea of having, at a department head meeting, having them asked, do you have something that could use work?
Does the Energy Commission have all those audits as well, or copies of them, or is it, it's each department has 1, 2, or 3 energy audits that have happened?
They haven't thrown them away. I mean, part of the frustration, and no, Val's able to speak like this because she's professionally speaking. She has lived through the part where they felt insulted. She has lived through the part of having them come to her and show her that even if there was something that could be done, it was taken out of their budget to even do it. So they didn't have the matching funds in their budget, or they had already done things and had to go through another study.
So, if something can be reasonably done at no expense.
I'll have a department head meeting and
Yeah. And then, the Energy Commission is probably like anxious to do something productive and valuable for the town, so.
I realize that. We appreciate it.
John?
Yeah, I think one thing we have to look at is we come up with ideas, but again, the town is strapped right now, and we are doing everything we can with the money we have. And, again, like Mike said, if there are no matching monies for the grants, we can manage it. But, we've had to consolidate positions. We've had to do a lot of other things, and being on the budget committee in this town for 14 years, we don't have a foreseeable way out right now. We need additional revenue wherever we can get it, and it's again where they've had the studies, they've looked at it, they've tried to implement things, but we don't have the money, and where are we going to get the money? So
Is the town open to writing grants that have in-kind matches? And that could be something that we can talk about down the road. I mean, this may just be something we need to explore first, but that's something that I've done 5 actually successful grant writing projects for the local foods Plymouth, and we didn't need to do matching dollars, but we had matching volunteer hours, staff hour, things like that. But that might be something that's just a thought that I'm throwing out there.
In-kind services are always fine,
Okay.
as long as the departments have the time to fit it in. It's, like John says, we've consolidated, we have less help.
Yep.
If you're talking volunteers outside of the departments, yes.
Are you talking about the Energy Commission members to come in and do the volunteer work?
It could be just folks in town that are interested in working to reduce energy use on a town-wide basis, because they'd like to see that benefit in their tax bill, property tax bill. You know, it might be just volunteers locally, is what I'm trying to say, taxpayers.
Yeah, Paul?
Well, because they're gonna ask me, what kind of in-kind services do you think they would be coming up with for an energy program?
I don't know yet until I look at the audits to see what kind of work they're suggesting, the audits suggested. And I believe, just to speak to that, I believe Paul Phillips said that he has copies of them electronically.
That would be great if that's the case.
So I could answer that question, Paul, once I look at them, but what would be the first step here is to do a department head meeting, get these energy audits back in front of people's faces. What would be the first step? And like, what could we do? Because we want to just follow through with our commitment to, at the time that the Constellation contract was agreed to.
I'm thinking the first step would, check with Paul, see what he has, because that would be, a great first step is to acquire those audits from, his history with the Energy Commission.
Okay. Didn't the police department renovate based on that audit? Maybe, Paul, you know. Yeah. It was a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And also, if the audit for the street lighting is somewhere out there, because that was supposed to save us money over X amount of years, and it has cost us an extra $15,000 a year since we started. This is the first year that it only cost us an extra $4,000.
Is that because of the investment in certain kind of lighting?
And the constant changing of them and the types, and it didn't go the way they thought it was going to go.
So was there a projection on when they would start saving? Because again, sometimes you have to spend money, and I don't know, I didn't see that audit, but I wondered if it was the initial investments were the part that made it more expensive. I mean, it's kind of like putting the solar on the library.
No, I realize that, but when our yearly annual bill is $62,000 and we keep going over that by 15 every year since we started this 8 years ago.
So it's not the initial investment that you're seeing. See, I don't understand why it's that much.
And Bill knows too, and I know the co-op's are working on it.
Yeah.
Their time now, and they're having trouble, they need to be swapped out again.
But Bill Johnstone did, contact me, and this is like several months ago, indicating that they have the go-ahead to utilize the 49-watt bulbs versus the 63 or 64 watt, and that's what they replaced in all the our lamps. But yeah, the new bulbs would be quite a bit of savings, I think. So, but they'd only be swapped out as needed, so.
Right, so it's going to take forever. And the other problem is, the only reason why I want to be clear, the only reason why it was $4,200 over this year, not 15, is because we stopped swapping them out. Because they weren't sure yet how to go forward.
And as I understand it, we were going to just lights that would light up the area, not the way that it used to be. I forget what the term they used. A candle light? Back in the day type of
Like a
looms that would be out there?
Yeah, but you had two different committees back then. You had the dark sky that were overriding with the energy committee at that time was trying to accomplish. The energy committee was tasked and were trying to accomplish the savings of money. There was another group that wanted dark skies. They would not have approved the direction that we went into with the new LEDs, which in law enforcement, we love. No fire department, law enforcement, more light, safer conditions at night.
Right, and I don't know if it's me getting older, but it's hard to see people in the road downtown. You see maybe a little shadow, and then all of a sudden someone darts out from a car. It always seemed like years ago, everything was lit up. It was much safer in our town, so.
I'm afraid I wasn't involved in that part of I wish I could speak to that. I don't.
Well, I'm thinking about just the 49 watt bulbs as far as like brightness. The PD, Steve, has already taken a look at that, and he, agreed that the light is more than adequate. So it may not address your concern of getting old. I'm only kidding. But it's going to at least give off the same.
It's better than nothing.
Yeah.
In all honesty, you guys can see it, an example. Come here at night, the corner street light right here outside our side door. That's one of the newer ones. Look at the next one up. The light bounces off the next one and goes up over the roof. You can see the peak of the roof. You can see the reflection, the light bouncing off of this one, and it just goes a little bit above the doorway. It's much brighter, so you can see the sidewalk better, but the reflection isn't as high up. So that was a compromise, Mike, with the dark skies versus people also wanting more lighting. I think it works. I think they found it. I think you're right, Bill. I think that's a good solution, and it meets both the needs.
So I have your blessing to get the audits together, and there might be a department head meeting.
I'll have a department head meeting.
You would have a department head meeting. Would you want us to come and just listen in? Is that something, I don't know how those work. They're closed.
Department heads.
Got it. Oh, I'm not a department? Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks,
Anything else?
Grace.
Thanks, Grace.
Are there any committee reports?
The Chamber of Commerce had their annual meeting at Owl's Nest Golf Club. It was extremely well attended. They had a presentation by for the new website, which had a soft opening or start, and it's going well.
That was the website that was presented at the annual meeting
Yes.
a year and a half ago, or something, maybe a year ago, something like that.
It was just a couple months ago.
Oh, was it? Oh, okay. Didn't the state bring up a person that highlight the new website? Or in any event, maybe it took them a while to get it off the ground, or it's online now. Thanks.
I didn't bring my planning board notes, so do that next time.
Okay. So PERLAC met on the 26th, the Pemmons-Wassett River Local Advisory Committee. Also, Water and Sewer met on the 26th, and the primary order of business at that meeting was to discuss the latest draft of the new water and sewer rules and regs. And I noticed that those are posted online at their site. So if you're interested, you probably should take a look, because they have two upcoming public hearings. The first one is scheduled for tomorrow afternoon at 5:45. And it's not going to be a continuation, but they're going to have two hearings. They figured that most people will be interested, and they'll have to find the time between the 10th and the 24th. So July 24th at 5:45 would be the next one. And I'll try to attend the one on the 10th. I don't know, Brian, you're also involved in that. Can you make?
Good. So you can do tomorrow, but you can't do the 24th?
I'm not certain, but I'll check my calendar on the 24th. All I know is that, I'll shoot for
You
1.
can schedule it after.
Okay. Sounds good. Also, the planning board did have its work session on the 5th, and we reviewed the latest draft of the master plan. What we did was take a document that existed in a proprietary software that was, nobody could manipulate it unless you were trained. So we're able to pull that over to a Word doc, and now we could edit it internally and then ultimately release it to the town. So we'll have a public hearing and then solicit comments on that. And that's pretty much it from me.
Okay. The Plymouth Conservation Commission met on June 19th. One of the big items was, at that point, the work had been started in the Favre area, but that was done by June 22nd, and the results were pretty spectacular. They really got a lot done for the money they spent. And their meeting in July, their July 17 meeting, is actually going to be a hike up Plymouth Mountain. I think they're going to be looking at the signage and need for replacing signage. Instead of having it here at the town hall, they're going to meet at 5:30 at the trailhead. If anybody would like to hike Plymouth Mountain with the Conservation Commission. And I am not going to be able to make it to that meeting. And the Energy Commission did not meet in June, so all I had.
Okay, thank you.
Nope.
Okay, well, any public comments? Senator?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Should I approach or should I?
Either way, yeah.
So I want to talk for a bit about the governor's veto of 2 bills that impact the biomass industry for electric generation. As you know, Alexandria shuttered May of last year. Bridgewater's on its last legs. We're going to lose all 5 of the remaining ones. Burgess has been supported because there was not a rate increase with that. I think that is a very wrong-headed decision. I've had a hour-and-a-half-long discussion with the governor's head of the Office of Strategic Initiatives, Jared Chacoin. You may know Jared. I've known him. He lives up here in Haverhill. And so what I have done, I drafted a letter, had it reviewed by Jason Stock, Timberland Owners, had it reviewed by Tom Thompson, and that letter I managed to garner 16 signatures. That's what we need to overturn the veto in the Senate.
Okay.
I'm fairly confident, wrong word, I'm cautiously optimistic that I can probably add 1 or 2 more to that, so we get a 17, 18, maybe even a 19 vote override. The problem that we're going to look at is the House. Okay, and I can tell you there's a great deal of effort. I'm involved up to my eyeballs with this because it is critical to Grafton County. We have a great deal of our economic base is timber and lumber related. We're looking at an estimated loss of 1,000 jobs. And that starts the cycle of domestic violence, because financial pressure is a large driver of that, substance abuse, spousal abuse, you name it, the whole cycle. So I'm working very hard with members of the House and with Jason and lobbyists as well to get on to every single state representative. That's where the real fight's going to be. Surprisingly, there are some from up in this region that are willing and looking forward to sustaining the veto. And so we're working on those people to help them understand the impact of this. It will be crushing, and that's timber tax revenues to towns, okay, foreclosures, all those things, that 1,000 job loss up in this part of the world, which is on tenuous economic footing anyway. And now there is talk of landowners saying, well, if we can't get rid of the 60% of our wood that we cut that's low-grade timber, okay, a retaliatory measure to shut down the snowmobile trails. That $600 million to the coffers of the state through business and business taxes. I should say to the economics, the economy of the state. So the three-legged stool in the North Country is in jeopardy. I want to assure you that I'm working very hard to hold the Senate and improve that margin. I'm pretty confident I can do that. And we'll be working with the members of the House to help them understand exactly what's happening here. And so just wanted to bring you up to date on that because that's very significant to our whole regional economy up here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. I would agree with that. Any other public comment? Seeing none, I'd like to go into a non-public session in accordance with RSA 91A:3, Roman numeral 2, A through I. Is there a motion?
So move.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
We're in non-public.